Hi. Okay, so I didn't do another one yesterday, like I thought I would. So I'm going to do one now. The four readings for trans and queer performance are, the first one's by Martha Mokas, which was Musical Articulations of Black Feminism in Christina Ancapora and Angela Cotton, Unmaking Race, Remaking Soul, Transformative Aesthetics, and the Practice of Freedom. Vivian Namaste, Beyond Image Content Examining Transsexuals' Access to the Media, which was in Sex Change, Social Change, Reflections on Identity, Institutions, and Imperialism. God, that one was so good. Still some questions, but anyway. Presentation of the Self as Performance, The Birth of Queenie, also known as Valerie Mason John. And this is an Acts of Passion, Sexuality, Gender, and Performance. And that's Savitri, I think. Savitri Hensman. And then Living Performance in Nina Rappi and Maya Chowdhury by Maya Chowdhury. The Maya Chowdhury piece, not thing, I guess. She's a poet, and she's... I think she's British, and she writes about being a woman and a lesbian and like a person of color. Her identity, like her ethnic identity, I guess, is sort of liminal or intersected, because she's biracial at least. And it's sort of interesting, like, I wasn't a huge fan of her poetry, honestly, but this person in my class brought up that it was interesting that she seemed to be sort of essentializing herself and what it meant to be a woman by concentrating on like genitalia and menses and vaginas and that kind of stuff, and that is kind of essentializing, and I thought that was an interesting point because it wasn't an article that I really dove into. The presentation of self as performance, the Queenie article, that was interesting too. I thought it was interesting that it was gay men that named her Queenie. That was sort of disturbing to me, that you would sort of rename yourself, allow other people to rename you. But, I mean, it's a community that she's a part of, right? And it's a flamboyant performance, and she always dresses flamboyantly, and she sort of came up in the clubs and stuff like that before doing work with the gay community in, like, an active political way, like being Grand Marshal and gay pride parades and stuff like that. So that was interesting. In terms of the question of trying to figure out, like, as if gender is performative, and it is, how she chose to perform it was extremely flamboyant and extremely challenging, which, and then and so I guess the difference between her and, like, other people who perform their gender unconsciously, to a certain extent, is what makes her an artist. And that she does it in an artistic context as well. Like, she does it on stage, or she does it, you know what I mean? So that was interesting to me. That was a good article. She seems like a really interesting person because she's also a journalist, and her journalistic voice is much different than her artistic voice, it seems like. But she was really interesting. Then the Vivian Namaste, like, the access to trans people in the media, again, you're seeing that distance between trans bodies and non-trans bodies, people who are more comfortable performing genders that have been assigned to them. However that works out. That was interesting. A guy in class talked about it, which was interesting about this article, just that there's this desire to separate the trans struggle from, like, LGBT struggles, and we were sort of like, that seems kind of like shooting yourself in the foot. If what you're trying to say is that people who perform the gender differently should have as much access as anybody else to media institutions, support, venue, or whatever, as people who perform their gender unconsciously or whatever, like more normative, hegemonic versions of these things, that de-aligning yourself with people that have those normative issues seems sort of like, and I mean, it's not a struggle that I struggle with, so I'm not judging that decision, and I can certainly understand where it comes from in the sense that it is different, but I think that in terms of where the struggle is going towards in the future, that perhaps it's going in the same place, like that normative heterosexuality seems to be like an unconscious choice. And not that homosexuality is a conscious choice, but it makes you conscious of choices, right? Like of consequences of acting on your desires and stuff like that, right? So, and the same thing with transgender people, their desires to act on their gender in a different way than what is prescribed to them is against the norm. And it's the same kind of thing. It's performing your sexuality, it's performing your gender. They are sort of linked, right? Yeah, I think there's similar struggles, so I wasn't sure about that. But just the sort of like, they're like the body, again, the distance that people have to people who perform differently or look different or behave differently than what they're accustomed to is very interesting to me. I'm so consumed with that space, that distance. I'm probably going to have to think about that for 100 million years. But just that these processes of oppression have to do with imperialism. It has to do with sort of predatory capitalism and stuff like that, and like infecting other places with hegemonic values of like dominant culture stuff. So sort of battling down the doors. And it's been very difficult for trans people. Like a really good friend of mine's trans man, and it's very difficult. It just seems like extremely difficult, and I don't think it should be. Like, gender is something I think that we all struggle with and kind of fucks us over one way or another, whether it's because of expectations of you that you don't meet or that you meet too well or whatever, that it's just something that we struggle with. Everybody struggles with, and I'm not trying to like take away from the struggle of trans people, saying that it's like, well, it's because when I wore pants all the time when I was a kid, it's exactly the same. It's not, obviously, right? But it's something that you can relate to. It's not inhuman, you know what I mean? It's something that you can intellectualize and accept and internalize and understand, you know, in a real way. Anyway, that was interesting. And the musical articulations of black feminism, I only sort of like, it was very difficult, like, the music was amazing. It was just like all these lyrics and very intense, very politically interesting lyrics. This was the Michel Ndegeocello. Fuck, I'm so sorry. I can spell it for you. It's Ndegeocello. Tricky. But that was also a very good article. So, anyway, those are my thoughts. I have one more catch-up video, which is on Native arts interventions, and then I'm caught up, so enjoy this. Mwah.